And so I beg you, let it be me.
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Well, we have a lot of ground to cover today, so I'm going to plunge right in, if I may. Some of it is very sort of lightweight, and some of it isn't. But most of it is going to be hopefully entertaining, and the bits that is heavier will hopefully be informative. But before anything, I am going to start with something that I read, because I have actually alluded to this in the past. And on previous videos, and I know this to be a fact, so I'm going to read this out because I have personal experience of it. John Carr, who was a 65-year-old man, ignored the evacuation warnings and stayed behind to save the house that his parents had built in the 1960s and he had inherited. Mr. Carr used his garden hose to extinguish the spot fires and stayed awake all night and all day to stave off the blaze. He said, "The house was built by my mother and father in 1960, and I lived here my whole life, so there was a lot of memories here, and I think I owed it to them as well as myself to try my best to save it." He's a former pilot. Now, in 1986, I was caught up in that huge fire that consumed much of the Var region in the south of France. I was with my boyfriend, James Buchanan-Jardine, at his mother's house at Moaun-Sartoux, which is in the south of France. And we were warned that the fire was coming. And James was originally an architect. He studied architecture. He didn't work at it, but he studied it. And he said we will be perfectly safe as long as we douse the roofs of the buildings. There was his sister's house, his mother's house, and the pool house. And we took out the hoses, and the two of us, doused both everywhere and kept on dousing it because we didn't know when the fire was coming. And then you heard the fire coming. You could literally hear it before you saw it. And the sky was then illuminated. And we dove into the swimming pool. And the fire literally leapt over all of the doused buildings. Had people known this, they could have doused their houses with fire hoses. Garden hoses, because the water had not been cut off domestically, but the fire hydrants were cut off. So the people who were trying to rescue you from a fire, the firemen, had no water with which to rescue you. But if you had a garden hose and you doused your property, you could actually, because the fire doesn't catch, so it just goes over. And I mean, it goes like this. You can literally hear it and see it, and it sounds like shh. It's quite extraordinary. So I say that for what it's worth. A bit late in the game, and of course I'm not really recommending that anybody do what James and I did, because I suppose there's always a chance that it won't work. But I think according to James, it was not a possibility that it wouldn't work. He wasn't going to endanger his life or mine. But I wouldn't recommend that anybody do what we did, but I would recommend that they listen, and if they were then inclined to do it, they should hopefully survive the way we did. But I just say that for what it's worth. So now I plunge in with Pauline, who says, "Dear Lady C, I read on the internet that Meghan Markle has decided to delay her new lifestyle program and cooking show with love, Meghan, due to the devastating wildfires in Los Angeles. She will accommodate victims in her Montecito mansion." Check out these pigs flying. Yeah, sure she's going to do that. Mr. Pickles is going to be right there to serve all the victims that she is going to give refuge to. There's going to be Mr. Pickles, Mr. Pickles. Let's not forget our original sweetie pie flying pig. If we don't see any photographs, you'll know it's as genuine as her love for her father. And really, in my opinion, for anybody else. But there we go. She will accommodate victims in her Montecito mansion. Netflix has postponed her show. It will now air on March the 4th. Why Meghan Markle did not delay her interview with Oprah Winfrey when Prince Philip was on his deathbed? The beloved late Queen Elizabeth had to watch this interview while her husband was dying. So cruel. Well, I know that Meghan has released a statement suggesting, and indeed Netflix has backed her up, that the idea was hers. But my little bongo drums, and remember, I know Hollywood royalty. Yes, Aurora, I do, and you know some of them too, but we're not going to mention any names. Meghan wasn't accommodating anyone in the house, number one. And number two, my understanding is that it's absolutely untrue that Meghan was the one who wanted to postpone the show. On the contrary, I gather her reasoning was, why postpone it? I mean, we didn't postpone Oprah, and H's grandfather was dying. So why would we postpone this? However, if I can find the comment that I wrote down, which she had, I can't remember, I haven't written it down, sorry, and I don't want to wing it in case I get it slightly wrong. But I actually did put it up on Twitter, X, where somebody made the point to me that Meghan was made to postpone the show because Netflix was taken aback by the ferocity of Meghan's unpopularity. And they understood that if the show were not postponed, this would feed Meghan's toxicity and reduce such chances as there are, few as they are, for the show to be a success. Oh, I found the comment. They thought, they being Netflix, they thought they might have problems owing to how toxic she is now, but they've been taken aback by the depth of feeling the public have shown. And they're the ones who lent on her to postpone it. And I was told that their rationale is very simple. Get out there and do whatever you have to do between now and the 4th of March to make sure that you reduce the hostility that the public feels for you. Otherwise, the show is going to be an unmitigated disaster. So what does Meghan do? She goes ambulance chasing. She's a disaster, Bessie. Oh my God, there's a disaster. Let me inveigle my way into it and let me make it all about me and how wonderful I am. And that's her contribution. And let's see what else she comes up with. I should think the 2 CEOs at Netflix are going to be tearing out whatever hair they have. And if they don't have any on their head, they'll be tearing out someone else's. But I don't think they'll go to tear out Meghan's because they don't want all those extensions to come off in their hands. Noel Abrahams says, can't wait to hear your comments on Rachel and Harry being roasted by California residents for their private tour of the remains of private property, while victims and property owners were denied access. Isn't that interesting? Well, Meghan and Harry used their links with the Newsoms. That's what they did. They offered to show up, and they showed up twice. The first time, they didn't get the attention that they thought they would get, so they repeated it, evidently. Justine Bateman, who is quite a well-known figure in Hollywood, has labelled them disaster tourists. Well, did you notice Meghan gluing herself to Mrs. Gavin Newsom's side in the hope that she was going to capture some press attention? I make that point for what it's worth, and I will then go on to the next question because I'm going to cover this ground with the questions that so many of my wonderful community have asked. Bear Did It says, where the carcass is, the vultures gather. Jesus. This is what I think of the pair acting like this. Vultures. Bear Did It quotes from Matthew chapter 24, verse 28, and the same quotation virtually is in Luke chapter 17, verse 37. And Janice Pownell says, the vultures are there again, but only to be filmed and only with security. Yes, they turned up with security. Having organized with TMZ, some hours before, so that the camera crews would be in place. And they also brought their own. Oh, dear. I don't know about you, but I'm high on charity. and the goodness of my heart. Yeah, I am. Well, what I found interesting was the naivety of Mayor Gordo and the cynicism of the Newsoms. All the photo ops were done so that Meghan and Harry and the Newsoms would look good. Now, Gavin Newsom is a good-looking man and his wife is a good-looking woman. Meghan was right to actually, when she was standing beside Mrs. Newsom, have on a face mask, because she would have really realized that Mrs. Gavin Newsom was going to steal her thunder looks-wise. Meow. But the cynicism is beyond belief. But I gather that Gavin Newsom has got it in the neck. But you noticed how perfectly coiffed and ready for my Vogue moment. Anna Wintour, where are you, Mrs. Gavin Newsom? Meghan at least had the good sense to dress down. And, I mean, she always looks as if the cat dragged her in. But this time, it actually was desirable that she looked as if the cat had dragged her in. But what a tragedy. And you don't only have the Newsoms doing a photo op and Harry and Meghan being allowed to do a photo op. You have poor Mayor Gordo speaking about Harry and Meghan's great personalities and what big hearts they have and how sincere they are. And he forgot to say, and the pigs were flying all over LA. And as for the useless Mayor Karen Bass, I mean, I ask you, had she not been busy pushing her diversity programs and cutting the fire budget, maybe some of this would have happened, but the severity would have been quite different, and the outcome would have been different as well. People are quite rightly outraged. But you see, that's what happens when you do not choose people because they're good at their job. You choose them because of their color or their orientation or their face fitting your political profile. So I'm pretty damn sure, though, that if Karen Bass or the Newsoms or Harry and Meghan discovered that they have a brain tumor, they're not going to go to a podiatrist. However, that's what they inflicted upon the people of California. Brain surgeons will now perform brain surgery on rabbits because they're not color-coded properly. However, podiatrists will perform brain surgery because their face fits. Robin Sandry says, according to Winning Communication, the Sussexes were at the fire site in LA for 17 minutes. A photo opportunity. At least one of the people she hugged was from her PR team. Yes, they were there for 17 minutes, and the PR team was there, and when she was leaving, she spun back to give another photo op of her. I'm a hugger. I'm so sincere. Daddy? You surely don't think I'm going to speak to you? You've run out of money. I don't have any use for you anymore. And I'm not wonderful and sincere. I've got a big heart. So, She hugs the employee and they all step into the vehicle together and depart. But what's so extraordinary about it is the cack-handedness of it all. That's really what's extraordinary. And the nerve of it all. Ringing up TMZ, getting TMZ to be there hours before, while there are people actually whose properties have been eradicated are not allowed to go back to their properties. And they're swanning around with a photo up. The whole thing is such a disgrace, it's unbelievable. Thomas Mass says, "Hi, Lady C. I have 2 comments I would love your opinion on. 1, there has been a lot of reports on Instagram and the newspapers that all is not well with King Charles and Camilla. She apparently is said to have angered Charles by demanding titles and roles of more power for herself and her son. Especially, is this true?" I'll answer that one first. Oh no, and then it was suggested some roles have been taken away from her and she is not happy. I'm going to answer that one first. It's so ludicrous, it's beyond belief. First of all, Queen Camilla didn't work until she was a woman well into her 50s when she married King Charles, who was then the Prince of Wales. She didn't even want to marry him. He's the one who wanted to marry her. Now there's some news for you. She was perfectly content to continue as long as their relationship were grounded. He's the one who was desperate to marry her. And once she was married, she had to work. She'd never worked in her life before. But she has discovered that work has its rewards and she's grown to enjoy it and she's very good at it. She is not in great health and she paces herself. Believe me, giving her less work would not be a punishment to her. It would be a pleasure. So right there, whoever's spreading that story has got the wrong end of the stick. Now, as for the rest of it, she's not demanding titles and roles of more power for herself and her son, and some people say her daughter as well. It's utter rubbish. She has far more responsibility and influence than she ever set out to have, and she uses it wisely and well. So, and they've not fallen out, she and the king. They are really what Harry and Meghan would like you to believe that they are, because they are like salt and pepper. So that's, of course, it feeds the California cruise, I suppose you'd say, agenda to have people believe that there is this conflict between the king and the queen. It's utterly, utterly untrue. Of course, sometimes people project what's happening in their lives onto what happens in other people's lives. Need I say more? I'm sure you know who I'm speaking about. Now, number 2. Almost immediately, Meghan and Harry went to the fire areas of LA and are shown on American news as supporting the victims, supporting them. Yeah, I've got to get a hug in. And it's, oh God, there's nobody around. And also, I don't want to hug those dirty people. Let me hug my employee. I'm so humane. Almost immediately, Harry and Meghan went to the fire areas of LA and are shown on American news as supporting the victims and support staff, firefighters, with food and soft drinks as well as hugs. Yes. Did you see them bring anything out of their car? I gather not. It all seems that they are trying to gain popularity, and this is nothing but a PR stunt. They are dressed in casual clothing and jeans. Well, there they were sensible. And it was nothing but a PR stunt. And at least she's listening to what Netflix says. Sweetie pie, try to make yourself a little bit more appealing to people, because really, otherwise, hasta la vista, baby. Wendy B says, it's interesting to see Mel Gibson and other celebrities helping whomever they see and without a film crew. That footage has been seen because those helped were shocked by who it was helping them. That's the best way, and it seems the royal way. Think of the good this couple could have done. Well, we've been there, we've done that, and we've all agreed that yes, they had the perfect platform, the absolutely perfect opportunity, but you can't expect pigs to fly, and no matter how much lipstick they put on, they're still pigs. Jennifer Garner worked full shifts. Mel Gibson evidently was doing sterling work. Mel Gibson's a very devout Catholic. There are people, many people, including Hollywood types, who were happy to help, some of whom the public doesn't know about and will never know about because they don't want their goodness, their acts of genuine charity being love for your fellow man, to be reduced by recognition, because that's what happens. Once people know that you've done something good, it takes something away from it. Oh, of course, if you're a Pharisee or a Sadducee, or Harry or Meghan, that's another matter altogether. Tez and BJ's says, I heard such a good quip, I had to share it. Quote unquote. She couldn't slip on socks or shoes upon first meeting William and Catherine when they were invited over for dinner. Yet she's covered in gold and diamonds to prepare lunch for friends. End of quotes. I don't mind the bracelets, but the rings are downright distracting and totally out of place. It was also pointed out that the way she holds a knife reveals that she's no cook. That's right. No cook holds the blade of the knife with their finger. And I'm not a cook, and even I know that and wouldn't do it. It's just dumb. And I like cooking. I don't wear rings when I'm cooking. But then, if I were going to be meeting people who were connected to a loved one of mine whom I had never met before, I would have enough self-respect and dignity and respect for them and respect for my loved one to accord them a degree of sartorial respect by at least not looking like a ragamuffin. But you see, Meghan was proving a point. She was proving to Harry, I'm not impressed by you and your royalty and all of that. None of that means anything to me. The only thing that matters to me is our love and all the fabulous things that we do together, like a roasting chicken. All of that matters to me greatly because H, I love you totally for yourself. I never Googled you. I knew nothing about you. And I'm going to prove it when I meet your brother and sister-in-law. I'm just going to show them that I have nothing but contempt for them and their roles. I mean, I'm not impressed. Why would I be impressed? I was Rachel Zane. Yes, I was. And Harry was dumb enough to believe it. Every now and then, anybody in the public eye meets someone who knows who you are and they pretend that they don't. It always leaves a slight smell in the air, something ratty or fishy. LAW or Law, whichever one, says, do you think Shamima Begum should be allowed to return to the UK? I have always felt tremendous disquiet for the way the previous government took it upon themselves to strip citizenship from somebody who was born and brought up here. I don't care that she has betrayed the West, that she has betrayed decency, that she really should be tried for crimes against humanity, and that she should be given the ultimate punishment. I don't care. It's the same situation as with Asma al-Assad, who they're trying to say, although she was born and brought up here, that she is a British citizen. These women are British citizens, born and bred. They are British. The British state does not have the right to deprive them of their citizenship. If they being the British state, if the British state thinks that these women have committed crimes that deserve punishment, they should be charged with the crimes that they're supposed to have committed, and they should be tried and, if necessary, have the full force of the law brought to bear upon them. Now, Asma al-Assad is a very sick woman, and her husband was a dictator, but putting aside the press rhetoric, since when were wives to be punished alongside their husbands just because they're wives? I'll tell you since when. Since the French executed Marie Antoinette for the crime of being the Queen of France, for the crime of being her husband's wife. It's a very unsound principle. It is unfair, it is unjust, and it is actually outrageous. Now, Shamima Begum is another case altogether. I mean, she actually has committed crimes against humanity, which are provable. If she's such a monster, she should be tried wherever the correct forum for her to be tried is. I really don't see that the British nation has jurisdiction over the crimes she committed in the Middle East. I mean, they can claim jurisdiction, but I really don't see that that would be appropriate. On the other hand, she could certainly be tried before an international court. And personally, I would have no argument with her being dispatched permanently. That wouldn't bother me at all. But what bothers me is that the previous British government deprived her of the right to return to her homeland. I'm sorry, it is outrageous. So, I think she should be allowed to return to the United Kingdom. I don't think she should ever have been prevented from returning to the United Kingdom. Her crimes, odious as they are, should be dealt with. There are many international fora available for her to be tried, and I think she should be tried. But she should still be allowed to return to the United Kingdom. Al Evans says, the UK government has the money to sponsor the war in Ukraine, but it doesn't have the money to help its country's pensioners. This is a crime and a disgrace. It certainly is. We are busy depriving our older citizens of heating in one of the coldest winters on record, while we are sending money to fund a war. I mean, it's outrageous. The government does not have its priorities right. It really doesn't. This government doesn't, and the last government didn't either. But then we are poodles. We are poodles who, when we are told, wag our tails, we wag them, because that is what successive governments of both political parties, in fact of the three major political parties up until the creation of reform, have been doing. So whether it was the Conservatives, Labour, or the Liberal Democrats, they have been pandering to an ideology that is not necessarily looking out for the best interests of the British people. I think it's absolutely scandalous that our assets are diverted on harem-scarum schemes, as well as warmongering, and we help to not only have our citizens suffer, but we help to inflict suffering upon the citizens of other countries in the name of influence, is what it's in the name of. I think the whole thing absolutely stinks to high heaven, I've got to tell you. Absolute stinks. And that's my take on it. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know the questions you would like me to be addressing. Thank you so much. Oh, and incidentally, I have been asked to post a very nice article that was written about me in the New York Social Diary, me and Castle Goring. So I'm going to post it at the end of this. Okay, thank you so much. Take good care. Godspeed. And if you have enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and bye-bye.